The painter's ultimate lesson about what truly matters in life. What is the purpose of art? Is it to capture a moment or to perfect it? We spend so long trying to immortalize beauty, we risk forgetting that beauty is meant to be lived. A memory is not the thing itself, but a ghost of it. And sometimes, in our desperate attempt to paint the ghost, we turn our back on the living. We chase perfect reflections, while the source of the light stands waiting right behind us. Elias was a painter of ghosts. His studio, a converted attic at the top of a stone cottage, was a sanctuary of stillness and light. The air hung thick with the scent of linseed oil and turpentine, a smell that was more home to him than fresh-baked bread. Dust motes danced like tiny, silent stars in the shafts of afternoon light that slanted through the single large window. For years, Elias had dedicated himself to a singular pursuit, painting not what he saw, but the perfected memory of what he saw. He would paint a sunset not as it was, with its fleeting, messy colors, but as the mind remembered it, a flawless, divine gradient. His landscapes held a stillness that nature itself could never achieve. His greatest subject, and his greatest challenge, was his wife, Elara. Her face was a landscape of its own, and one he could never quite capture to his satisfaction. He had dozens of canvases of her, each one a technical masterpiece. He painted the memory of her laughter from a summer picnic 5 years ago, the thoughtful gaze she had while reading by the fire last winter, the serene smile she wore while sleeping, but they were all echoes. One afternoon, as the sun cast long golden fingers across the wooden floor, Elara entered his sanctuary. She moved with a gentle grace that always seemed at odds with the rigid stillness of his world. In her hands, she held a single wild rose she'd found growing defiantly at the edge of their garden. It was imperfect. One petal was slightly torn, its color a touch faded at the edge. "Look, Elias," she said, her voice a soft melody against the room's silence. "Isn't it beautiful? It fought through all the weeds to bloom." Elias glanced up from his canvas, his eyes clouded with the distant focus of his work, taking a moment to adjust to her presence. On his easel was a portrait of her, an idealized version from their youth, her skin impossibly smooth, her eyes holding a brilliant, unblemished light. He was trying to capture the essence of her joy, but he was painting it from a memory a decade old. "It's lovely, my dear," he murmured, his gaze already drifting back to the canvas. "Could you hold your head just a little to the left? The way the light caught your hair this morning. I'm trying to remember it." Elara's smile faltered, just for a second. The wild rose in her hand seemed to droop. "The light is catching my hair right now, Elias," she said softly. "I'm right here." He didn't seem to hear her. He was mixing colors on his palette, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was chasing a ghost of the morning light, while the warm, living afternoon sun bathed the woman he loved right in front of him. She placed the rose in a small glass of water on a nearby table, a silent offering to a man who was no longer in the room with her, and quietly left. Elias, lost in his work, didn't notice its fragrance begin to fill the air. This became their silent, unspoken rhythm. Elara would bring him life, a fresh cup of tea, a story about a neighbor, the scent of rain on her coat, and Elias would thank her distractedly, his soul tethered to the canvas. He believed his work was an act of devotion. By perfecting her image, by immortalizing her beauty, he was honoring her. He failed to see that the greatest honor he could give her was his presence. He was so busy curating a gallery of their life that he was missing the exhibition. Then the season turned. A cool autumn wind began to strip the trees of their leaves, and a different kind of chill entered their home. Elara grew quiet. The light in her eyes, the very light Elias had spent years trying to paint, began to dim. At first, it was a lingering fatigue, then a cough that settled deep in her chest. The doctor spoke in hushed tones, using words like rest and time. The silence in the house grew heavier. It was no longer the productive silence of Elias's studio, but an empty, anxious one. He tried to paint. He set up a new canvas, determined to capture her now, to create his masterpiece, to paint her back to health with the sheer force of his will and talent. He wanted to paint the brave, quiet strength he saw in her. But his hands felt clumsy. The colors on his palette looked dull and lifeless. He would look at Elara, resting in a chair by the window, wrapped in a thick blanket, and then look back at his canvas. The translation failed. The image in his mind was a noble, tragic heroine. The woman before him was simply his Elara, looking tired. Her skin was pale, and there were new faint lines of worry around her mouth that he had never noticed before. Frustration mounted. He couldn't find the perfect angle, the perfect light. Every brushstroke felt like a lie. The vibrant colors of his studio felt garish and loud compared to the hushed sanctity of their living room. One evening, he finally put his brushes down. The unfinished, awkward painting on the easel felt like a monument to his failure. He walked into the living room, where the only light came from the soft glow of a single lamp. Elara was asleep in her chair. The rhythmic, shallow sound of her breathing was the only sound. He knelt beside her, something he hadn't done in years. He didn't try to analyze the way the lamplight fell on her face. He didn't catalog the colors or the shadows for a future painting. He just watched her. He reached out and took her hand. It was cool and delicate. He studied the faint silvery scar on her knuckle from a kitchen knife accident years ago, a detail that he had always smoothed over in his portraits. He traced the blue veins beneath her thin skin. These were the textures of her life, the imperfections that told the story of the woman he loved. These were the details he had always painted out. A profound, aching realization washed over him. He had spent a lifetime trying to capture the idea of her, when the reality of her was a universe infinitely more beautiful and complex. His paintings were not tributes. They were edits. He had been so obsessed with creating a perfect memory that he had forgotten to make new ones. He had been trying to paint the warmth of her hand instead of just holding it. He stayed there for hours, simply holding her hand, feeling the faint pulse beneath his thumb. He felt the weight of it, the reality of it. The scent of old books and dried lavender filled the air. In the quiet darkness, with the ghost of a painting mocking him from the other room, Elias finally understood. The masterpiece was not on the canvas. It was the life they had built, the shared glances, the quiet mornings, the imperfect, wild roses. When Elara stirred and her eyes fluttered open, she saw him there. She didn't see the celebrated artist. She saw her husband, his eyes clear and present for a long, long time. A real smile, gentle and weak, touched her lips. "Elias," she whispered. "I'm here," he said, his voice thick with emotion. And for the first time, it was the complete truth. From that day on, the brushes gathered dust. Elias spent his days with Elara, reading to her, helping her walk in the garden when her strength allowed, or just sitting in comfortable silence. He found a small sketchbook and began to draw again. But his style had changed. He drew quickly, loosely. He sketched the way Elara's hand curled around a teacup, the crooked smile of their neighbor, the messy, chaotic beauty of the weeds overtaking the rose bush. They weren't masterpieces. They were moments. They were alive. The purpose of art is not to capture life, but to remind us to live it.